Is that what you're supposed to do? Make eye contact?
I will never do that.
That's the move.
Okay, this is a scene that's out of a children's book. A ton of liquid chocolate. Chocolate literally flowed out of a factory and caked on the streets of a West German town on Monday. A tank overflowed. 25 firefighters were on the scene trying to shovel and crack the chocolate. This seems like my Christmas dream come true.
That seems great.
Willy Wonka gone wild.
There you go.
All right. Avoiding a couple of jokes there. Set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The Five. Special report is up next. Hello, Bret.
Thank you for avoiding those, Greg. President Trump's former fixer and lawyer, Michael Cohen, is sentenced to 3 years in jail. The UK Prime Minister survives a vote of no confidence, but the agreement on a Brexit plan remains elusive. And we have brand new Fox News polls, plus an interview with Democratic Socialist, Vermont Senator, and potential 2020 contender, Bernie Sanders. This is Special Report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. The president's former lawyer is going to prison. Michael Cohen was sentenced to 3 years today for his role in orchestrating payments to alleged Trump mistresses, financial misdeeds, and lying to congressional investigators. An advisor to Cohen says President Trump's former political fixer will state publicly all he knows after Special Counsel Robert Mueller completes his investigation. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here with details tonight. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Bret, and good evening. While the hearing was relatively short, lasting only 70 minutes, it was at tense and at times emotional.
Surrounded by friends and immediate family, the president's former personal attorney Michael Cohen entered the federal courthouse in New York City, receiving 3 years in prison for tax evasion, making false statements, and campaign finance violations. Cohen addressed the court and his relationship with Donald Trump, saying, quote, "My own weakness and loyalty to this man put me on a path to darkness, not light. I should have followed my inner voice." With his children in court, one daughter crying, Cohen said at one time he would take a bullet for his old boss, but he was no longer willing to cover up what he described as the president's dirty deeds. Federal investigators alleged campaign finance violations over admitted payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels and Playboy playmate Karen McDougal. President Trump denies having any affairs and has not been accused of any crimes related to the payments. The U.S. Attorney's Office said the National Enquirer's publisher, AMI, reached a non-prosecution agreement, admitting, quote, it made the $150,000 payment in concert with the candidate's presidential campaign to ensure the woman did not publicize damaging allegations before the 2016 presidential election. The woman is widely reported to be McDougal. On Capitol Hill, mixed reaction to Cohen's sentencing, which included 2 months for lying to Congress over a 2016 Trump-Moscow real estate project.
Anytime a former lawyer of yours goes to jail is probably not a good day, but I've yet to see any evidence coming from Mr. Cohen of collusion.
Pretty striking development and a moment for reflection for some of my Republican colleagues who have steadfastly insisted there's nothing to worry about here.
The president's former national security advisor Mike Flynn will be sentenced next week for lying to federal investigators. His legal team asked a D.C. judge Tuesday night for probation and 200 hours of community service. According to the filing, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was later fired for cause, called Flynn at short notice in January 2017, sending 2 agents, including disgraced agent Peter Strzok, to interview Flynn about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. The filing states Flynn did not have a lawyer present, and the agents did not warn him that false statements during the interview could be prosecuted. By contrast, Flynn's lawyers said other Trump associates were advised of the serious nature of the probe.
Arguing for no jail time, Flynn's lawyers cited his military service and extensive special counsel cooperation, including 62 hours of meetings and the production of thousands of records. As for Cohen, he told the court today he will continue to work with the government. Bret.
Kevin, thank you. The president has yet to respond to seeing his former lawyer sentenced to 3 years in prison. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is on the North Lawn. Everyone there, John, kind of watching Twitter for a reaction. Good evening.
Yeah, and so far nothing today. Ahead of the Cohen sentencing, President Trump was all over the place, urging Judge Pauley to throw the book at him. On the day that Cohen learned of his fate, from the White House, crickets. In his only public event today, signing an Opportunity Zone initiative, President Trump made no mention of Michael Cohen. Even on Twitter, he was oddly silent. The president's outside counsel, Rudy Giuliani, weighing in on the sentence, though, saying Cohen's claim of blind loyalty is laughable, considering Cohen secretly recorded President Trump talking about a payment to Karen McDougal, then leaked that tape to the media. And while Cohen and AMI both admitted the payments to McDougal and Stormy Daniels were meant to influence the election, Giuliani insisted they were private transactions and not a campaign expense. He's supposed to know what to do, the president said. That's what you rely on people for. That's what you pay lawyers for. President Trump did weigh in today on the terror attack in Strasbourg, pinning it to border security, tweeting, "Another very bad terror attack in France. We are going to strengthen our borders even more. Chuck and Nancy must give us the votes to get additional border security."
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very
times.
quickly.
After yesterday's contentious Oval Office battle over wall funding, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo used the Strasbourg attack, an apparent act of homegrown terror, to push for border security.
It's why, frankly, border security matters too. These are related issues in the sense of we need to know who's coming in and out of our country, so there are fewer people that the FBI and sheriff's offices in Kansas and places like that have to monitor and watch.
On China, President Trump said he may possibly intervene in the case of Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive arrested in Canada last week. The president telling Reuters, "If I think it's good for the country, if I think it's good for what will certainly be the largest trade deal ever made, I would certainly intervene if I thought it was necessary." The Secretary of State was asked on Fox and Friends this morning whether the president would go over the heads of law enforcement to save a trade deal.
We always have to balance American interests. Anytime there's a law enforcement engagement, we need to make sure we take foreign policy considerations into effect. It's totally appropriate to do so.
And tonight we can take one more list off of the possible list of names, or we can take one more name rather off the possible list of people to replace John Kelly as the chief of staff. North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows. In a statement, the press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, saying, quote, "The president told him we need him in Congress so he can continue the great work he is doing there." The president insists, though, Brett, he's still got about 12 people who'd love the job.
John Roberts, live on the North Lawn. John, thanks. According to the new Fox News polls out tonight, 46% of voters approve of the job President Trump is doing in office. 52% disapprove. That is a slight drop from January, but this approval figure has barely budged all year, staying within the narrow range of 43 to 47%. Looking ahead to 2020, 38% would vote to re-elect President Trump if the election were held today. That's all voters. When asked to forecast the election, 39% think President Trump will be reelected. 52% do not. Again, all voters. But 84% of 2016 Trump voters say they will definitely or probably vote to reelect the president. 10% say they will vote for someone else. Special counsel Robert Mueller, of course, all over the news. Those polled approve of the investigation by the special counsel by a 19-point margin, 56 to 37. Former Obama housing chief Julian Castro has taken a step on the road to 2020 by forming a presidential exploratory committee, which allows potential candidates to begin raising money. The Texas Democrat says he will announce a decision on January 12th. Castro says he has not spoken to former President Barack Obama about his potential candidacy, but plans on consulting Democratic leaders coming up, including Obama, and Castro is signaling that he's probably in. When House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is not sparring with President Trump, she's trying to corral support from Democrats in the House. Correspondent Peter Ducey reports from Capitol Hill on her plans to try to limit the tenure of leadership.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Nobody ever mustered up the courage to challenge Nancy Pelosi's climb to Speaker.
It was so inspiring to hear my colleagues place my name in nomination once again.
But if she wins, Pelosi won't be in the Speaker's lobby for long. She's trying to term limit herself as a way to win the support of incoming freshmen who won on a promise to pursue new leadership. Politico reports there could be a 3-term max for the top tier of leadership. Pelosi's office says, quote, there are various conversations going on about a path forward. Progress has been made, and the conversations are constructive because all involved care about the institution of the House of Representatives.
There's 40 new members, and they're looking out in the future, and they're going, I'll never be a chair. And that's probably the case because there are no term limits now.
But if Pelosi tries to shorten the length of the leadership tenure, she's going to get some pushback from the second highest ranking Democrat. Incoming House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer was asked, how do you feel about Ms. Pelosi trying to negotiate term limits? He said, she's not negotiating for me. Hoyer was asked, has she kept you apprised of her conversations? Hoyer said, no. Some newer members are siding with Pelosi.
You know, I'm the youngest person on the House leadership team right now for the Democrats, and I want to see more, young people, new people at the table, and I think term limits is one way to do that.
And even if this term limit truce falls apart,
60 votes,
No, but in the House,
and we don't have.
Pelosi is seen as being in prime position to be elected Speaker anyway.
She sealed the deal yesterday on live television when she was able to, skillfully show how effective she can be dealing with the very erratic, irrational president.
But some current Democratic lawmakers are telling Fox tonight that Pelosi's plan has no point because even if it shortens her time as Speaker a little, it still lets her stay on for now. And there are some Democratic members of Congress that want her gone now. Brett.
Peter, another effort up there on the Hill, the Senate taking some steps tonight to try to condemn Saudi Arabia after the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Right now on the Senate floor, Brett, lawmakers are debating a measure that would punish Saudi Arabia by pulling American support for troops fighting in Yemen's civil war that are backed by Saudi Arabia. This resolution has been around since before Khashoggi was killed. It deals primarily with the War Powers Act, and it's bipartisan, sponsored by both Republican Mike Lee and independent Bernie Sanders. But Mitch McConnell is telling Republicans to vote no. He supports a separate measure co-sponsored by Republican Senator Bob Corker because he thinks that one does a better job of addressing the broader concerns about Saudi Arabia, blamed by U.S. intel agencies of being complicit or worse in the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Brett?
Peter, thank you. Joining me now is one of the co-sponsors of that Senate bill, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Why is this important?
It's enormously important. I think it's vital that everybody in America understand that what's going on in Yemen now, Brett, is the worst humanitarian disaster facing this planet. We're talking about in the last 3 years as a result of the Saudi-led intervention in the Yemen civil war. We're talking about 85,000 children already starved to death. We're talking about imminent starvation for millions more. We're talking about 10,000 cases of cholera breaking out every single week. We're talking about a generation of Yemen's children who will be stunted physically and intellectually because of the famine that is now existing. So we have got to end that. Furthermore, I think we have got to say to the Saudi government, which is a despotic government, which allows no dissent, which treats women as third-class citizens, that we are not going to follow their military adventurism into Yemen. And the last point as to why it's so important, and people like Senator Mike Lee, conservatives have been making this point, and progressives, is that for decades, under Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, Republican Congresses, Democratic Congresses, the Congress of the United States has abdicated its constitutional responsibility over war making. It is not the president who has the responsibility under the Constitution to send our troops off to war. It is Congress. We have got to take it back.
And Senate Majority Leader McConnell mentioned the constitutional fight potentially with the executive branch over war powers that this may spark from his point of view. But I want to talk about President Trump last night with Reuters on the issue of Yemen. He said this, quote, I'm much more open to Yemen because, frankly, I hate to see what's going on in Yemen, but it takes two to tango. I'd want to see Iran pull out of Yemen, too, and I think they will. I guess the question is, the Houthis in Yemen launched more than 200 Iranian-made missiles into Saudi Arabia. How would you propose to deal with that?
Look, the issue is not only getting U.S. Out of the war led by Saudi Arabia, but we have got to do everything in our power, and we have the power to bring the Saudis and the Houthis together to end the incredible destruction which is taking place. No doubt about it. The Houthis are playing a very bad role in Yemen as well. But I think most experts will tell you that the bulk of the destruction has been caused by the Saudis. But bottom line is, we have got to end that war, not perpetuate it, and we have got to work with the rest of the world in providing humanitarian aid to the children of that country who are now starving to death.
Senator Sanders, here is the Secretary of State today on the murder of Khashoggi.
The Saudis have already paid the price. There are the folks who actually committed the murder we've held accountable. We will continue to do that. No one underestimates how horrible this murder was. But remember, Iran is running rampant throughout the Middle East. The death of any one individual is awful. The death of hundreds of thousands of people in Europe or the Middle East or the United States matters an awful lot. And President Trump is committed to protecting America.
So the question is, if this relationship falters, do you risk changing the national security outlook for the Middle East from a U.S. national security point of view?
No. Look, above and beyond the humanitarian disaster in Yemen right now, let me be very clear. We have been in Afghanistan for 17 years now, and I do not want to see the United States get sucked into a never-ending war, costing us, our brave men and women in the military, and trillions more dollars, get sucked into a Middle East war between, on one hand, Saudi Arabia, and the other hand, Iran. What we need to do is use our clout on Iran, on Saudi Arabia, to bring these people together to say, you know what, we're not spending trillions of dollars more. We're going to help bring peace to that entire region.
I want to talk about two more topics with you, Senator. And one is the president says if there's a shutdown and he's fighting for border security, he'll take that because he wants $5 billion to fund a wall. Do you think this can get done, number one? And number two, do you think the border security is important?
I think border security is enormously important, but I think building a wall is a very costly and inefficient way to do that. And I'm not alone. I mean, many experts think that given the kind of technology that we have today, we can protect our southern border without building the wall and spending $5 billion. Furthermore, Brett, I'm not quite sure. He may, but I'm not quite sure that he has the votes in the House to do that.
Yeah, but Senator, in 2013, you voted for a comprehensive immigration. That included $18 billion for a wall and border security. So you're saying the $5 billion is a non-starter?
Well, I'm saying that you have $5 billion as part of tens of billions more for a wall. What I'm saying right now, sometimes you vote for things that are part of a broad package. But if you're asking me, at a time when we have veterans sleeping out on the street, seniors not making it on $12,000 a year Social Security, that's a good investment for the taxpayers of this country to build a wall? No, I don't think it's a good investment.
All right, I want to end with this. Your party, where do you think the energy is in your party? Is it towards your progressive side of the party, or do you think the party is in search of? MoveOn.org had a 2020 straw poll yesterday. The top five leading as a person, a candidate potentially, is Beto O'Rourke, and then Joe Biden, and then you. Move On obviously supported you throughout 2016 significantly. Are you concerned that the party is changing?
Do I think the party just won 40 seats in the House of Representatives and 7 governor's chairs? I think that it's not just the party. It's that conservatives, progressives understand there's something wrong when we have a dysfunctional health care system, that we should have health care for all, that we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage, that we should rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, that we should end the incredible greed of the pharmaceutical industry who are ripping us off every day by charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. That's not Democrats. That's not Republicans. That is what the American people want. And I am going to do my best to push an agenda that addresses those and many other issues.
Can a Texas congressman who lost his Senate bid win your party's nomination for president?
Well, I think it's a little bit premature. We got a few a little bit of time left before that.
When do we get your decision whether you're going to do it again?
Well, you know, when you're going to take on Wall Street and you're going to take on the drug companies and take on the insurance companies, before I decide that I want to run, I got to make sure that there is that grassroots support, and that's what we're ascertaining. If there is, I'll run. If there isn't, I won't. But we're taking on big time some of the most powerful special interests in this country.
Senator Sanders, we appreciate your time. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Brett.
Up next, Brexit prompts a no confidence vote for the UK Prime Minister. She survived, so now what? Brexit continues to cause chaos in the United Kingdom as Theresa May, the Prime Minister, faced a no confidence vote this afternoon. Conservative leaders survived, but that only solves one problem. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott is following the rough road ahead before the March Brexit deadline.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May lives politically to fight another day. 48 members of Parliament from her own Conservative Party forced a vote of no confidence, which would have booted her out of the Prime Minister job as well as the party leadership. all to do with her handling of Britain's exit from the European Union, or Brexit. Some Conservatives thought the deal she'd worked out left the UK too close to the EU. In the end, 200 lawmakers voted to keep May in office, 117 to kick her out.
The result of the ballot held this evening is that the parliamentary party does have confidence.
Despite a third of her colleagues voting against her, the Prime Minister was pleased and determined.
So here is our renewed mission: delivering the Brexit that people voted for, bringing the country back together, and building a country that truly works for everyone.
She's not out of the woods. A vote on her Brexit plan had to be postponed until next month for lack of support on all sides.
The time for dithering and delay by this government is over. The Prime Minister has negotiated her deal. She's told us it's the best and only deal available. There can be no more excuses, no more running away.
In the meantime, May will look for any sweetener she can get from European leaders, including assurances a post-Brexit UK will have the distance from Brussels her members want.
Well, I've said for a while that people who don't make this deal need to think very carefully about what the alternatives are.
The clock is ticking. The deadline for leaving the EU is next March, and there are no assurances May will wrap it up by then, which could lead to a calamitous no-deal Brexit or even a second referendum on the EU. Tonight's vote does mean that Theresa May is safe in her prime minister job for another year. She's also reportedly promised that she would not seek another term in office after this one ends, which is in 2022, and that is a lifetime in anyone's politics. Bret.
Greg Palcott live in London. Greg, thanks. Up next, the battle between the U.S. and China is not just about trade. We'll explain. First, beyond our borders tonight, hundreds of French police and soldiers are searching for the man identified as the suspected shooter who killed 2 people and left another 2 brain dead near a Christmas market in Strasbourg on Tuesday. The French consider that attacker an Islamic extremist, as the French ambassador told me here on set last night. Police have detained the suspect's parents and 2 brothers who are also known for Islamic radicalism. Turkey plans to launch a new military operation against U.S.-backed Kurdish fighters in Syria within a few days. U.S. troops are deployed with Kurdish fighters in parts of Syria, in part to prevent clashes with Turkey. The Turkish president says the target is not the American soldiers, but what they call terror organizations. Dozens of North and South Korean soldiers traveled through the demilitarized zone together today to inspect the sites of their rivals' frontline guard posts to verify they'd been removed. Soldiers from the 2 Koreas exchanged cigarettes and chatted as they inspected 22 guard posts, 11 from each country inside the DMZ. The removals are mostly symbolic. South Korea still has another 50 posts or so. North Korea has 150. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. Stocks were up today. The Dow finished the day ahead 157 after being up more than 400 points at one point during this day. The S&P 500 jumped 14. The Nasdaq rose 66, in part because trade negotiations with China appear to be making some progress. For the president, for the administration, and obviously for the markets, the Wall Street Journal reports Beijing is scrapping its Made in China industrial policy, criticized by the White House, in favor of one that allows greater access for foreign companies. Nothing is official yet, with the new program expected to launch early next year. China has praised the decision to release Huawei Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou on bail. The U.S. sought the arrest on suspicion Wanzhou misled banks about Huawei's business dealings in Iran. This plays out, of course, as the U.S. and China battle over the future of telecoms and their trade relationship. Tonight, correspondent Jillian Turner explains what that future could look like.
Chinese conglomerate Huawei is a global leader in the tech industry and one of the U.S. tech sector's arch rivals in the race for the future of 5G. 5G promises to bring lightning-speed cellular connections to web users worldwide. The type of connections needed to power all the game-changing innovations of the future: artificial intelligence, wireless drones, and self-driving cars. While the U.S. has long held the lead, cyber experts warn Chinese web companies, semiconductor developers, and telecom equipment makers are catching up.
China is very much transitioning from being a kind of a klepto economy where they steal intellectual property and other technological capabilities to actually being able to innovate on their own.
And whoever dominates 5G gets the keys to the kingdom.
The relationship between the United States and China for the foreseeable future is going to be decisively defined by the technology developments within each country.
Officials caution if China overtakes the U.S. in any tech domain, it'll also jeopardize American national security interests.
Huawei, very large company founded by someone from the Chinese military. It's frightening that as the second largest purveyor of cell phones, any one of those cell phones can have a listening device for the Chinese government.
But at least some leading tech insiders say the future of 5G isn't a winner-takes-all game.
It's a technological step, and it's important, and the Chinese are going to have companies that do it, and the Americans are going to have companies that, and other countries are going to have companies that do it. We have a choice through the procurement process to use technology that we feel is safe.
Cyber experts say the first phase of 5G slated to roll out next year in 2019. It'll be available in Austin, Texas, then New York, and will then be integrated across the United States. Brett?
Jillian, thank you. Up next, doctors released the symptoms of the illness of American diplomats in Cuba, and they're now trying to solve this mystery.